All right, so you want to build wealth, huh? I mean, who doesn't? We've all got those dreams, right?
Right, and there's no shortage of advice out there. Everyone's got a system, a strategy, a surefire path to riches.
Exactly. Books, podcasts, gurus, you name it. But let's be honest, it can get overwhelming, even a little disheartening sometimes.
Absolutely. And that's why we wanted to do this deep dive, to cut through the noise, the get-rich-quick schemes, and really focus on the long game.
Love it. So what are we digging into today?
Today, we're talking about something even more important than getting rich. We're talking about staying wealthy.
Ooh, okay, I like that. Staying wealthy. Because it's one thing to make a fortune, but holding on to it, that's a whole different ballgame.
You got it. It's a different mindset, different skills, a different approach altogether.
So how do we even begin to unpack this? Where do we start?
Well, sometimes I think it helps to look back in time to learn from those who've walked this path before us. So let's rewind the clock back to the Roaring '20s. The Jazz Age, the stock market boom, a time of incredible economic growth. And right at the heart of it, we find a legend named Jesse Livermore.
Jesse Livermore. The boy plunger. Okay, I'm familiar with this story. Didn't he make and lose a fortune several times over?
He did, but it's the way he did it, the lessons we can learn from both his successes and his failures that are still so relevant today. See, Livermore, he started with nothing. He was a self-made millionaire by his 30s. But it was the 1929 crash that really cemented his legacy.
Black Tuesday, right? One of the biggest stock market crashes in history.
Exactly. Imagine the scene. Chaos on Wall Street, panic in the streets. And here's Livermore walking into his home on the evening of Black Tuesday. His family's terrified, convinced they've lost everything.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Talk about a tense dinner.
Right. But here's the thing. Livermore hadn't lost everything. In fact, he'd made a killing. He'd been secretly betting against the market, what we call short selling.
Wow. So while everyone else was panicking, he was raking it in. Talk about nerves of steel.
No kidding. Livermore became a Wall Street legend almost overnight. But on the flip side, we have another story from that era, a very different one. This one's about a guy named Abraham Germansky.
Germansky. Okay, I don't think I know this one.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, Germansky was a real estate mogul, incredibly successful in the years leading up to the crash. He'd built himself an empire, but unlike Livermore, he lost it all when the market tanked. There's this heartbreaking article in the New York Times from that time describing his despair.
So you've got these two guys, both incredibly successful in their own right, but only one comes out of the crash relatively unscathed. What set them apart? What was the difference maker?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And here's the thing. Both Livermore and Germansky were incredibly skilled at making money. They had that getting rich part down pat. But there's a twist.
Okay, I love a good twist. Lay it on me.
Fast forward a few years, and Livermore, the guy who seemed invincible after the '29 crash, well, he gambles big again and loses everything. He ends up taking his own life.
Oh, wow. That's tragic.
It is, and it highlights a crucial point. Both Livermore and Germansky, they were masters of wealth creation, but they lacked a critical skill, wealth preservation.
So it's not enough to just make the money. You have to know how to keep it.
Exactly. It's like building a beautiful house right on the beach, but forgetting to factor in things like storms, erosion, basic maintenance.
And eventually that house, no matter how grand it was, it crumbles, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing about wealth. It's not static. It's not something you achieve and then just coast. It requires constant attention, a different skill set to maintain and grow. And there's this fascinating story, lesser known, but connected to the world of investing, that I think illustrates this perfectly. Have you ever heard of a guy named Rick Guerin?
Rick Guerin rings a bell, but I can't place it. Refresh my memory. Who was he?
Well, picture this. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. Investment legends, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Oracle of Omaha and his right-hand man.
Yeah.
Everyone who follows the markets knows those two.
Right. So early on, there was a third guy in that mix, Rick Guerin. Really an investor, part of that inner circle. But you rarely hear his name mentioned now, and there's a reason.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What happened? Did they have a falling out or something?
Not quite. See, Guerin, he was a phenomenal stock picker, saw huge returns early on, just like Buffett and Munger. But there was a crucial difference. He lacked that long-term vision, that understanding of risk management that Buffett and Munger were famous for.
Ah, so he was more of a gambler, a gunslinger.
You could say that. He'd take these huge positions, swing for the fences every time, and for a while, it paid off big time. But then came a market downturn, Not even a crash, really, just a blip compared to 29.
And that's when it all went wrong for Garen.
Wiped him out completely because he hadn't built in those safeguards, that margin of safety. He was so focused on the upside, on those massive wins, that he neglected to protect himself from the inevitable losses that come with investing.
So 3 incredibly talented investors, all starting at the same time, but only 2 with the staying power to become icons. It really drives home your point. It's not enough to just ride the wave. You got to be prepared for the undertow too.
Precisely. And that's where those 3 pillars we talked about come into play. Remember, building that unshakable foundation.
Right. So you're not wiped out by one bad bet or one unexpected event.
Exactly. Then planning for the unplannable. Because as we've seen, life and the markets, they have a way of throwing curveballs.
No matter how much you analyze, how much you plan, there's always going to be something you couldn't have predicted.
Exactly. And that's where that 3rd pillar comes in, cultivating that barbell personality.
Right, the barbell personality. We've got to unpack that one a bit more. It's such a fascinating concept. What does it mean to have a barbell personality when it comes to your finances?
So imagine a barbell, right, with weights on either end. On one side, you've got optimism, that belief in the future, the long-term potential of the market.
Okay, I think we all need a bit of that, right?
Right.
Especially when the news cycle's looking bleak.
Absolutely. But here's the counterintuitive part. On the other side of that barbell, you need a healthy dose of paranoia.
Paranoia. Isn't that, well, a bit extreme?
Not when it comes to money. You need that skepticism, that questioning attitude to avoid getting caught up in the hype, the get-rich-quick schemes, the this time it's different mentality that can lead to disaster.
So you're saying I need to be both Warren Buffett, the long-term optimist, and like a doomsday prepper when it comes to my money.
Well, maybe not a doomsday prepper, but you get the idea. It's about balance. Optimism for the long game, but paranoia for the short term. It's about asking the tough questions, doing your due diligence, and not being afraid to walk away from something that seems too good to be true.
Because often it is.
More often than not. But here's the thing, this barbell personality, it's not just about investing. It applies to so many areas of our financial lives, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Think about careers, for example.
Exactly. It's not just about landing that high-paying job today. It's about building a skill set, a career that can weather those inevitable economic shifts and industry disruptions.
Because let's face it, the days of working the same job for 30 years, those days are over for a lot of us.
They are. So it's about adaptability. It's about constantly learning, evolving, and making sure you're not so specialized that you become, well, obsolete.
Right, like what happened to the video store clerk when streaming took over?
Ouch, yeah. But you see my point. No matter how successful you are at one point in time, things change. So you need that barbell personality in your career just as much as your investment portfolio.
So be optimistic about your future, your potential, but be a little paranoid about complacency, about becoming too comfortable.
Exactly. Because in the end, financial security, true wealth, it's not just about how much money you make. It's about weathering those storms, adapting to changing circumstances, and coming out stronger on the other side. And that peace of mind, that's priceless.
Couldn't agree more. Well, on that note, that wraps up our deep dive on staying wealthy. We've covered a lot of ground here, from historical examples to practical tips, but the real magic happens when you take these insights and apply them to your own life.
Absolutely.
So we'll leave you with this. How can you cultivate that barbell personality in your own financial life? What steps can you take today to build that solid foundation, plan for the unpredictable, and embrace both optimism and that healthy dose of caution? Think about it, discuss it, maybe even lose a little sleep over it. Trust us, it's worth the effort. Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Becoming a Millionaire in 5 years. Remember, every small step you take today brings you closer to your millionaire goals. If you found value in today's video, please give us a thumbs up and share it with someone who's also ready to change their financial future. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, let's turn those dreams into reality. See you next time.